Yesterday at 1 in the afternoon, there was a tweet that went out from the one and only Jason Schreier, posting an article or sharing an article that he had written for Bloomberg, where he resides. And the article was simply titled, "Last of Us multiplayer video game faces setbacks at Sony. Weaknesses were found in the game even as the HBO series became a hit." And basically what he goes on to say is the team working on the game was scaled back after a recent evaluation, said the people who asked not to be named because they weren't authorized to speak publicly. A small group remains on the project while the company reevaluates the direction. While the game has not been canceled, many of the developers have been moved on to other projects. Following the request for comment, Naughty Dog, the Sony subsidiary working on the project, put out a statement on Twitter saying that they wanted to give it more time. Okay, not the end of the world, but they're just taking some time. But not a whole lot beyond that. Well, right after he tweeted this out, there was a post by Naughty Dog on their official newsletter page. And it simply is titled "An Update on The Last of Us Online." This is one thing I do love about like Jason Schreier's articles, is it kind of forces a lot of these companies to respond to stuff they wouldn't otherwise respond to. They would normally just ignore it, but somehow he's able to get them to just fess up to it, which I appreciate. What this post says is, "We realize many of you have been anticipating news around the project that we've been calling The Last of Us Online. There's no easy way to say this. We've made the incredible difficult decision to stop development on that game." They're walking away. They're done. It's over. It's over, folks. It's over. It's dead. It's gone. "We know this news will be tough for many, especially our dedicated The Last of Us factions community who have been following our multiplayer ambitions ardently. We're equally crushed at the studio as we were looking forward to putting it in your hands. We wanted to share with you some background of how we came to this decision. The multiplayer team has been in pre-production with this game since we were working on The Last of Us Part 2. Crafting an experience we felt was unique and had tremendous potential. As the multiplayer team iterated on the concept of The Last of Us Online during this time, their vision crystallized, the gameplay got more refined and satisfying, and we were enthusiastic about the direction in which we were headed. In ramping up to full production, the massive scope of our ambition became clear. To release and support The Last of Us Online, we'd have to put all our studio resources behind supporting post-launch content for years to come, severely impacting development on future single-player games. So we had two paths in front of us: become a solely live service game studio or continue to focus on single-player narrative games that have defined Naughty Dog's heritage. We are immensely proud of everyone at the studio that touched this project. The learnings and investments in technology from this game will carry into how we develop our projects and will be invaluable in the direction we are headed as a studio. We have more than one ambitious brand new single player game that we're working on here at Naughty Dog, and we cannot wait to share more about what comes next when we're ready. Until then, we're incredibly thankful to our community for the support throughout the years." So they've spent years on pre-production. They say that this was worked on since we were working on The Last of Us Part 2, because originally this was assumed to be a multiplayer mode for that game, and then it grew and they decided to spin it off into its own thing. This means it's been in development for like 5, maybe even 6 years in pre-production. That's how they phrase it. They've been in pre-production with this game. So it's not even clear if they ever entered full production or what happened. It seemed like they had a full team working on it that was moved off after the Bungie evaluation, which again, it's really funny that Bungie, of all companies, was sent in to evaluate this game, and they found it to be problematic and unlikely to drive a lot of long-term players when Bungie themselves have been really struggling to be successful in any meaningful way. So very, very interesting. The other thing that they phrased it as, which a lot of people also found interesting, is that they phrased it that we've made the incredible difficult decision to stop development on the game. Now, it's easy to read that as just Naughty Dog made the decision, but it was also, the understanding was the reason Sony or Naughty Dog was doing this was because Sony and PlayStation pushed them to do a full live service game as part of Sony's push to get into the live service market with 6 of these games coming out in the next handful of years. And they wanted basically one of these every quarter to every 6 months to be coming out. And of course, it didn't really happen. So one of the things I've been wondering is just how much of a role the departure of Jim Ryan has had on these changes, because Jim Ryan comes into the company, he heads up the launch of the PS6 or PS5, not PS6, the launch of the PS5. You guys remember this? Half the trailer is just weird graphic art. Horribly received. People were like, what the hell is this? And this was like their big announcement at their State of Play, and nobody cared. So Jim Ryan's pushing all this stuff, live service games that can print money, and it seems like that's where Sony's headed. That's their priority. And then he announces he's retiring at the end of this year. And right around that time that he announces that is when a lot of these projects are getting canned. A lot of them are collapsing and things are shifting and changing, which is very, very interesting. So it's making me wonder if like new Sony brass were coming to them and just being like, okay, be honest with us. Is this doable? Is this something that can be profitable long-term? Do you think this could work? And is this worth us continuing to double down on? And I think that they probably just said, honestly, if you want it to be successful, like they say, we'd have to put all our studio resources behind supporting post-launch content for years to come, and it would affect our single player games. And they were probably, Neil just sat down with them and was like, listen, we can do this, but it means that you're probably not getting The Last of Us Part 3. You're probably not getting a new Uncharted game. You're not getting our other stuff for an extra handful of years, because all of our resources will be put into this, just being honest. And they said, okay, well then that just doesn't really make sense, especially because I don't think it was just Bungie. I mean, we can meme on Bungie and make fun of them a little bit, but honestly, I think it's more than likely that they had playtests going. Live service games have tons of playtests that they do all of the time, where they take regular players, they have them sign NDAs, and they do all sorts of crazy stuff like that, but then they bring them in to actually try the game. Even single player games do this. If you watched Raising Kratos, the documentary on the creation of God of War 2018, they show playtests that they did during the development of that game, where they just brought people in to give them a try at playing the characters, playing the combat system, seeing how it felt. So you better believe they're doing stuff like that for these live service games. And I'm sure Bungie's feedback was a big deal, considering it was very negative, but I'm sure the playtests were also not very reassuring. Because if the playtests were amazing, but Bungie was like, we just can't monetize it very well as it is, they probably would still find a way to make it work. But the fact that they're willing to abandon years and years and years of work just makes me think that it wasn't playing very well, it wasn't working very well, and they just decided to walk away from it, which is crazy. Because again, this is something they've been working on since they were working on The Last of Us Part 2, so probably like 4, 5, 6 years, which is crazy to walk away from a project, abandoning it after all of that time. So it looks like we're just never going to see the light of day. We're never going to see what this looks like, how it plays. I'm hoping we get like a Jason Schreier style article in the next handful of months that explains kind of what went down, because I think that could be really, really interesting. But time will tell. I don't think this was just a matter of, well, we evaluated it and tried it, and you know what? It just wasn't working, so we're just deciding to walk away from it. I don't think that's what happened at all. I don't think so. I think that this was an iterative process, and after lots of testing and stuff, they just decided they couldn't get it working. That's my guess, at least. That's my guess. Now, one of the things that came out of this was it kind of went a handful of places on Twitter. So I feel like I should just address it and get it out there, because I think this is like a hilariously stupid thing. On Reset Era, which is like a forum that you can post stuff to, somebody posted a screen cap and they said, oh, by the way, this is just a screen cap of the main menu of The Last of Us Factions that I had laying around. I want to show you just kind of the crash course on stupid fakes that don't look very legitimate, just to get it out of the way. First and foremost, this is it. Now, they do have some text on here that it looks like they wrote on to be funny. I don't think they were saying that this was actually going to remain like part of it, just to be clear. So I don't think they were saying like all of this was going to stay. This is just like something they put on. But the immediate things that stand out to me whenever I see artwork like this, I always want to look at the hands, because nowadays with AI art, it's really easy to make something like this in Midjourney or something. Just say, make a Last of Us Part 2 screenshot of a woman sitting on a couch looking out a window, and it would generate this. You give it some noise, you do some really basic like UI stuff over top, really easy. But the way you can usually tell is hands, because AI art is really, really bad at hands. And I don't know what's happening with these fingers, but they do not look right. Like, this weird angle of knuckles is not what hands do. I don't know what happened to her wrist, but it's clearly broken. Like, just something's very, very off with it. It's very strange. And then if you go down here to this hand, like, what are these claws? What the hell even is this? What are those? I don't know what these are. Like, they're like actual pterodactyl claws. I don't know what that is. So this makes me think that this is also AI generated because nobody's fingers look like that. I don't know what that's supposed to be. The other thing, and perhaps the most damning, look at this window. What are the angles here? You know, like right down here, you see a corner. So it's like there's a corner here, and then the wall goes off in this direction, right? But then the glass of the window is angled back. So it's like, but then this like rectangle is not angled correctly. So no part of the perspective lines up. It's really, really disorienting. The more you look at it, it like breaks your brain a little bit. It just doesn't work. Does the right hand have 6 fingers? What I think might have happened is that they generated this and then they went in and did some touches. I think the fingers over here were screwed up. So they went in and tried to touch up these fingers and it just left them looking really weird. Same with this like window. I don't know what this is. The lamp looks really, really weird as well. The two identical, I don't know if these are supposed to be mirrors or what, but those are really, really strange. So there's just a handful of things that are really, really off. And I don't know what this character is looking at. Like her line of sight is off like over here. Naughty Dog is very, very careful with main menu screens. I don't think they would typically do something like this. And then other things, I mean, yeah, they did some little touches with like different version numbers and stuff, but that's extremely easy to put on. Little frame rate counter, really easy to put on. To me, it comes off as extremely likely that this is just AI art that was tweaked and then they put some UI elements, which honestly, the UI looks pretty good. The UI looks pretty normal, but I don't buy it. I don't buy it. That's my humble opinion. I guess I can put in a poll. Let's put in a poll on chat. Let's do a straw poll. And I want to hear if you guys think that that's legit. Wouldn't it be so funny if it was real? And then they're like, yeah, sorry guys, that's why we canceled it, because it looked terrible. Like every time we showed it to people, people thought it was AI. We're like, no, this is our video game we've been spending years making. It's like, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. So yeah, I think it's pretty clearly AI art. But with all of this, it's just really too bad. It's too bad because they put a lot of effort into this. They worked really hard on it, seemingly, and then it's just being buried and abandoned and walked away on, which for any video game sucks because they've clearly put a lot of time and effort into it, but they're just walking away, and that's too bad. Maybe one day we'll see snippets of it. Maybe they'll bring it to The Last of Us Part 3 and it'll be like a little multiplayer mode. I don't know, but it's just, again, so crazy to me to see any game that they spend years working on and then they just walk away. I follow a lot of Naughty Dog developers on Twitter as well. I talked to a handful of them directly, and a lot of them were working on The Last of Us Last of Us Online. And a lot of them are very, very frustrated because they feel like they had something kind of cool and special. But for the executives, I mean, if you're Neil Druckmann and you're trying to do single player games, and you're looking at this and you're like, hey, we can pour all of this time and effort and money into this and spend years as a studio shifting into a live service studio. But Neil doesn't want to do that. None of the other devs want to do that. Everybody hates the idea of that. So they probably went to executives and were just like, listen, do you really want to sacrifice like your chance at winning Game of the Year for a live service game that might perform well? Why would, like, do you really want to do that? And I think they made the right call. I mean, if the option is live service Last of Us game or single player games, I'd rather them do single player games. I still think that the idea of a battle royale type game with the Last of Us Part 2 gameplay could be really, really fun and really cool. I think that really could be. But I just don't want to sacrifice all of that other stuff at the altar of live service games. I just am not willing to do that. Not that I have a choice, but if I did have a choice, that's what I would say. Now, the other interesting thing about this post that came out is some of the phrasing that they put around some of the development that they had done. They say the learnings and investments in technology from this game will carry into how we develop our future projects and will be invaluable in the direction as we are headed, or in the direction we are headed as a studio. Now, presumably most of the learnings and investments in technology that they made were in terms of networking, maybe in terms of pushing for 60 frames while maintaining visual fidelity. I'm trying to think of other stuff they might have done. Probably large areas, because they needed to build out massive arenas for players to play in without load screens or very tight corridors, because it was meant to have a lot of players on the same map. So they probably got some really good data management stuff. And they're saying all of that will carry into how we develop projects and will be invaluable in the direction we are headed as a studio, which makes me think that they're once again, in whatever this next game is going to be, they're going to be leaning into even bigger areas and maps. That would be my expectation. And they're going to be doing a lot of work, perhaps even with introducing network elements, which could be really cool.
He took my thing.